If I have wounded some poor soul today, if I have caused one foot to go astray, if I have walked in my own willful way, dear Lord, forgive. If I have uttered idle words in vain, if I have turned aside from want or pain, lest I offend some other through the strain, dear Lord, forgive. the secret sins I do not see. Guide me, love me, and my keeper be, dear Lord, forgive.
Good afternoon, everyone. To Freda's family who are here with us in the building today, and for those who are attending virtually from all around the globe, I understand. I offer you my condolences on a personal level. My name is Eunice Friesen. I had the opportunity to meet Freda and get to know her a little bit about 6 or 8 years ago. And really enjoyed running into her in the community every time that I did. And always, you know, she was a great sense of humor and good for a laugh. And I realized as I was preparing today that I didn't get one of her jokes until I read about all of her jokes. And that was that she would often show up in a T-shirt and she'd, you know, open her sweater and make me read her T-shirt. And it said something to the effect of, "Speak up, I'm deaf." And I thought, oh, that's nice that she doesn't have to tell people or do this all the time. And I would speak up, and she wasn't deaf. I realized now the joke was on me, and she was chuckling away as I yelled at her. Freda Louise Tarrant was born on August 16, 1929 in Consort, Alberta, as the third daughter of Fred and Mabel Mattoon, and sister to Patsy, Phyllis, and Dawn. She was predeceased by Dawn in 2002, Patsy in 2007, and Phyllis in 2019. After living in Consort for the first 10 years of Freda's life, the family moved to Farintosh in 1939. Now, in Farintosh, it was necessary for children to invent their own fun. The availability of sticks in the pasture were ripe for the imaginative mind of this would-be cowgirl. She and her brother Don had stables of stick horses, all of which had names, and most of which often bucked off Freda and Don. She eventually got Jigs, which was a real horse and her best pal. She could catch him anytime, anywhere, when no one else could. She would jump onto his back, and he seemed to know just what he was expected to do without bridle or halter. He held a special place in her heart, and she talked about him often through the remainder of her life. One of Freda's other loves was poetry, especially those poems by Robert Frost. And this is one of her favorite poems that I'll read now. And as I received some tributes from her daughters, I noted that this was one of Nola's favorite poems of her mom's as well. And it seems to be a good time to read it after talking about Jigs, her horse. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though, and he will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and the frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there's some mistake. The only other sounds, the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. At about the age of 6, Freda began her career in carpentry by drilling a hole in the side of her dad's car with a brace and bit. Well, needless to say, he was not impressed. Despite getting in trouble, it didn't deter her in the least, or deter her interest in tools and woodworking, which she carried forward throughout her life. She participated in home and garage construction and cabinet making. Now, also around that same time, she got into a bit of trouble with her mom. when little brother Don was all dressed up and ready to go to town, but Freda didn't want herself to be seen in his unkempt company, and she thought his hair needed some fixing. So she hauled him over to the tractor oil pump and put his head under there and pumped oil all over his head and his nice yellow suit. Job done, nicely oiled, Freda in trouble. After schooling in New Norway and Camrose, Freda's path led her to St. Mary's Hospital, where she trained as an X-ray technician and went to work at the Smith Clinic in Camrose. During her leisure time, what little there was of it, she played softball, bowling, curling, sang in the choir, and enjoyed music. She went on to play the saxophone in the Grand Prairie and St. Albert marching bands. One unique talent she had musically was the ability to play the saw. But she gave that up when the bows of the hairs of her bow finally wore through. It was later in life when she took up the hobby of wood carving and won several ribbons in competitions. Dressing up for Halloween and goofy costumes and building parade floats were always highlights for Freda. 1956, she moved to Grand Prairie, where she was employed at the Nelson Clinic as an X-ray technician. Here she married Larry Tarrant, and to this union came 4 children: Colleen, Nola, Fran, and Rick, followed by many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When the children got older, Freda went to New York and took a course in electrolysis. She eventually moved to Edmonton and opened her own business called Pride Electrolysis Limited. She operated that business for 22 years in the Northtown Mall. And after retiring, she decided she still had time and energy, so she took up a short career as a surveyor's helper. This was a slightly different direction, but of course, with everything she did, it was an enjoyable time for her. She loved the work and the new skills she was learning. After her children grew up and set off on their own adventures, she traveled and took up square dancing. Now, after square dancing, she took up clog dancing. To those who aren't familiar with clog dancing, it's a mixture of tap dancing and square dancing, sort of a relaxed version of river dance. And she clogged her way through the next 25 years, actively 3 to 4 times a week at various clubs in Edmonton. Upon moving to Grand Prairie, she tried to get a group started but couldn't get enough interest. Now, Freda asked that we listen to a clog dancing song here at the service, and I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but that song was lost somewhere. So I thought we could watch a very short section of video here, and hopefully Freda will forgive us that we didn't play her selected song. Freda was, as were her siblings, quite opinionated about various current events and political issues raised in the newspaper, and she was known to often write to the Edmonton Journal expressing her point of view. One time after a Grey Cup game, she felt the national anthem had gone badly, and she wrote to offer to the Journal that she could sing O Canada at the next game. Now, I don't think they took her up on it. One other article she wrote about was after 7 horses had been killed and 1 injured at the Calgary Stampede. She wrote that the cowboys and the horses should change place on the chuck wagons. Another time, she heard that a police dog had been shot in the line of duty. So she carved and sent the handler of the dog a tiny wooden version of his dog. She always loved animals and advocated for them until her last days. As Freda's life moved on, even as a senior, she still had lots of plans and aspirations. She was very involved in trying to keep the Edmonton City Airport open for northern travelers. She lobbied for years, but unfortunately this wasn't to be. She did develop a keen interest in flying during this time, and she took flying lessons, receiving her pilot's license in 2002. And if I do the math, she would have been over 70 at the time. In a few minutes, I'm going to be asking anyone who'd like to share to come to the mic. So start thinking about a story or something, a memory that you would like to share about Freda. While you do that, I'm going to read some of the memories and tributes that Freda's daughters and a niece sent me. Fran had this to say: Mom had a special memory when she thought of each of us kids. Last time I saw her, she told me mine. I had an acreage out by Drayton Valley that I was fencing, and Mom came out to help me quite often. One day we were at the very back of the property, nailing up the wire. My donkey found us very interesting and followed us along the fence as we went. We kept blaming each other for forgetting where the hammer went until we realized it was the donkey who kept stealing it and hiding it from us. Mom was always ready to come and help build things. She truly was a jack of all trades. I've lost my hero. And this from Colleen. I did, some of what I was sent was quite long, and I took out some parts, and I want to just mention that those who knew Freda knew that she had some difficulties to overcome during life. And while we want to, of course, today focus on the wonderful, happy, beautiful memories and what she gave us, Colleen graciously acknowledged in her letter the difficulties that Freda overcame in life and how much it meant to her. And in her letter, she talks about what she learned from her mom. Mom, I want to thank you for being you, just the way you are. I couldn't have a better mom. I remember your love of playing softball, your love of music, loving to dance, and I remember how you looked when you talked about your horse Rex. I remember how creative you were. It didn't matter what it was, making costumes like a Tarzan outfit for me, or your awesome Halloween costumes, a Siwash sweater with the Texaco star on the back for Dad, and a proper woman's Texaco uniform for yourself, a caterpillar for the parade, more about that in a bit, umpteen dozen quilts, and even velvet dresses. You could design and make almost anything you put your mind to. You taught me how to use a hammer and a table saw, how to measure twice and cut once. You taught me how to plan a project, take the first step, see things through to completion, and to clean up after myself. You taught me not to be afraid of doing something different. Mom, I saw your strength and bravery as a young, married, working mother, and then as an overworked partner in a surplus business, and again as a divorced mother of 4 kids, having to do everything on her own. I also saw how you challenged yourself by learning electrolysis and how you built a new successful career, as well as how you challenged yourself on new hobbies, such as silversmithing, cross-country skiing, sign language, and clogging. You taught me how to keep going when times are tough and how to be strong. You taught me how to work through my fears and be brave. You are still teaching me these things and more every day. Love, Colleen. From Nola. Anyone that has spent any time with Mom over her life, and especially the past 4 years, has said their goodbyes and have told her personally all their tributes. She was a spectacular lady, and we're left alone with some treasured memories. Here are a few of my favorite thoughts about Mom. One particular morning that she created and has now passed into the next one particular memory that she created and has now passed to the next generation was her way of teaching manners. When she was first on her own as a single mom, we couldn't afford to go out for dinners, but she was determined that we would learn table manners. So, dinner with the Queen was created. She cooked her best meal, set the table according to the best setting instructions in the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. We dressed in our best clothes and came to dinner, prepared for polite conversation. There was even a place at the table set for the Queen, should she decide to visit. No elbows on the table, no slouching, and no talking with your mouth full. We all rolled our eyes when she did it and thought she was crazy. I realize now it was a great lesson, and I also realize how much fun it was many years later when Mom prepared dinner with the Queen for myself, Fran, the next generation, Christine. She had this incredible memory for poetry. Driving back from Grand Prairie to Edmonton, she started reciting poems that she'd learned in school. I was so impressed with all that she could remember, and the long drive went by very quickly. I don't remember all the words like she did, but every time I hear one of the lines that I remember, I smile and I think of her. She had a love of dancing, not the modern stuff, but real dancing. Her words, square dancing, round dancing, and finally her passion of clog dancing. It comes up again and again. I'm really glad we played that short clip because she's not scowling down at us now. Her energy in clog dancing was never matched, even by those half her age. I remember once that she danced the entire distance of the Edmonton Klondike Days parade. She laughed when she said her feet hurt after, but she couldn't wait for next year. Her creativity extended to her parade entries in the Canada Day Parade, with her most trusted assistant and probably partner in all fun things, Shannon. She created and crafted her float, designing the heads that represented all of the nationalities that helped create Canada and entered the float in the parade. I think she won a prize, but was disappointed that there were no photos of it in the paper. I'm pretty sure somewhere out there, a few of the heads are still floating around on somebody's shelf. Does anyone here have one? Just wondering. One final silly memory was when Mom came to Belgium after my graduation. She had been here a few times and sort of knew the routine at the airport. I arrived at the airport to meet her and waited, but she never came out of the secure area. I went to the airline to see if she'd been on the plane or if there had been some sort of emergency. Of course, they were unable to tell me anything. In a complete panic, I ran to the airport police station, and when asked what I needed, I said in tears, "I've lost my mum," realizing how ridiculous that sounded coming from an adult. But I proceeded to explain the situation to the officer, and they asked me for her description. My response, she would be your perfect image of your favorite grandmother, silver hair, glasses, and probably wearing a blue coat. The airport went on full alert searching for her. A few minutes later, the radio in the police station called, "We have her." And I was brought down to the gate. She was escorted out by 2 plainclothes officers, and her first comment to me was, "Why didn't you come in and get me?" When she told her story, the highlight for her was she was so pleased when the police officers walked up to her and knew her name. She's left an indelible mark on all of us. She lived an incredible life and will be missed terribly. But I'm happy she is at peace and also happy to have been left with so many memories. Goodbye, Mom. Love you lots. Freda's niece, Kathy, shared this one with me. Freda loved parades and made several floats over the years, including a caterpillar that was about 12 feet long. She recruited her kids and nieces and nephews to walk under this huge costume and make up the 16 legs. Leggings were provided, black and yellow leggings, so that everyone would match. It didn't occur to her, of course, that everyone had different shoes, and the kids were of various sizes and ages, so it presented quite a challenge with the different size steps and the heights of the kids to get this caterpillar walking. In her later years, while living in James Manor, she built 2 more floats, the mannequin heads, a little more about the mannequin heads. They were on poles looking over the edge out at the crowd. Now, she also had residents of the lodge sitting on the float inside the big wooden box that she'd made amongst these styrofoam heads. Their job as the living heads was to turn the fake ones periodically so it looked like they were all real. Freda also loved fairs, and she discovered that Claremont had an annual fair. She entered her birds each year and won ribbons every time. She tried her darndest to get participation out of other family members. She was always wanting me to enter carrots or vegetables or flowers, and I know who was it that had dahlias? Marv and Jean had dahlias. And I think she was a bit disappointed with all of us because we just weren't getting with the program, which was her idea of fun. Despite that, she was always very excited with her own entries. About 5 years ago, she was asked by the art gallery to put her birds in for a display. She was very proud of this, and I went to that opening at the Center for Creative Arts there. They were on display for about a month, and she even sold a few to the patrons of the gallery. Freda loved to dress up in costumes. Over the years, she dreamt up many innovative ones. 2 that I remember, Kathy remembers, were one on moving day for Phyllis when she moved out of James Manor. Freda came into the apartment dressed as a street person. No one recognized her. She had her party teeth in, which were a set of old dentures that she'd removed the top 2 front teeth. She had a wig that was unkempt and grubby clothes. She totally played the part of a street person and fooled us all for a few minutes. The last dress-up session was when she purchased a fart machine off Amazon. And on Halloween, she dressed up again in grubby clothes with a dog leash in her hand and a fart machine in her pocket. She went down to the lunchroom in the lodge. She asked people, "Have you seen my dog?" And she would bend over looking for her dog and look under the tables, at which time she would press her fart machine button. And then she said, "Excuse me," with an absolutely straight face, and continued on to another table. Another query about her dog, another bending over to look, and another fart. Apparently, the machine had many different fart noises, some longer, some shorter. I'm sure it was endless entertainment for her, even just alone in her apartment, let alone downstairs with the other residents. She thought it was hilarious, and I'm sure it was. And she was a master at keeping a straight face. She told me that some people never did recognize her when talking about it later, and she was laughing so hard she was crying. Freda was a spunky, feisty, tough-as-nails lady, and we will miss her. Freda had many friends along her journey, and as she would say, she ruffled many feathers. If anyone has any stories to tell, she would love for you to share the good and the bad. So, any volunteers to come and share a memory or a story of Freda? It's hardest to be the first. Good job.
Actually, it's not a story about Freda. It's a question for Kathy. Because Freda told Kathy that she would come back and haunt her. So I'm just wondering, how are you sleeping? Speak clearly and don't mumble. So that's my question.
Any hauntings so far? No? Wait till tonight.
I guess I could, hi, Shannon here. I guess I could illuminate folks a little bit on Freda's last job that she was actually paid to do. There was a senior surveyor around the Edmonton area who advertised for a helper. The senior surveyor was in his late 70s, and I think Freda was about the same age. So this fellow took on jobs that he thought he could do with a helper, and Freda volunteered to help, or was paid. And she said the funniest part was that sometimes they'd have to go out in snowbanks or feature two seniors getting high-centered in snowbanks, trying to find a survey pin that was frozen into the ground. They would find it. They took their time, would shovel off the snow, then get whatever tools they needed to chip away the frozen dirt. The next thing, once they found the survey pin, sometimes they had to pull it out. And so they would hook a chain onto it, and now we have two seniors in a hole in the snowbank with a crowbar fairly close to the ground, hooked onto a chain, hooked onto a frozen pin. And with a little bit of grunting, there were often some strange noises came out of the two of them, which Freda chuckled quite a bit about. And sometimes they had to give up the job at that point and go to the local washroom or donut shop or wherever. So Freda liked those kind of challenges. I guess the other thing I would say is Freda and Phyllis, they were sisters and they sort of got along. Both of them could use words like swords. And they would, I think they inflicted a lot of wounds on each other over the years. But they always got along somehow, sort of. I used to pick up prescriptions for Phyllis, my mother, at Safeway. And I didn't really need to show ID once they knew I was Phyllis's kid. So that was okay. Mom passed away. And afterwards I ended up picking up prescriptions for Freda. which would be 2 years later. And I didn't show any ID either. All I could say was, she's Phyllis's sister. And then they would say, oh yes, we remember them coming in here. It was quite a comedy. Because they used to natter at each other so much when they went into Safeway about what they should buy and what they shouldn't buy, that everyone remembered them. Freda had the car, and so she was Batman, and Phyllis needed rides. I think she was Robin. So it was the car owner and the person needing the car. And so anytime Mom needed to go anywhere, Freda would volunteer, and off they would go. My mom was, I guess you could say, semi-addicted to OxyContin because of her back troubles. And so because she was taking the Oxy in pill form, sometimes the pills would wear off and she would get really, really grumpy. And the next thing you knew, she'd slipped a pill into her mouth, and in a few minutes she was a chatterbox, so you couldn't shut up. Chatter, 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 chatter. So she had her ups and downs. So sometimes while Freda was taxiing Phyllis around town, things would change. Mom would get a little grumpy. And at one point, Freda drove back to the James Manor where they were staying at the time, parked the car, went around to the passenger side, ripped the door open and said, you get out of my car right now or I'll pull you out by your ears. So they had a good relationship. I guess those are my best times, best memories of Freda and the two of them. Thank you.
Thank you for those. For those of you who are attending virtually, and Connie's question to Kathy if there's any haunting yet. Kathy said not so far, and she'll report back after tonight, and possibly seeing how the service has gone. Whenever I get to know someone in the course of preparing for a funeral or a celebration of life, I always notice that there are particular qualities of character that stand out to me. And I've referred to Freda as a character, and I want to share some of the virtues, some of those really positive qualities of her character that we've heard in all these stories. Freda was a confident woman. Confidence is having faith in ourselves and in life. We feel capable and competent. We trust that we have the strength to cope with whatever happens. Confidence brings us the strength to try new things, to gain mastery through practice, as Freda did with everything from clog dancing to flying a plane to woodworking. With confidence, we cast off self-limiting beliefs and doubts. We offer our gifts as a worthy contribution, and when opportunity comes, we step up to it. We just say yes. She was also a woman of great creativity. Creativity is the power of imagination. We are open to inspiration, which ignites our originality. With creativity, we are resourceful and intuitive, solving problems in new and surprising ways. We know how to play, and we take time for dreaming. Discovering our own talents is a gift to the world, whether making a meal, playing a sport, or crafting a craft. Speaking of which, you'll notice the bird carvings all around on the 2 or 3 tables that we have here. And I've been asked to tell you to please take a bird as you leave today. But it's not so much please feel free to take a bird, it's please take a bird. Creativity connects us to the beauty of sound, design, color, movement, ideas, words, and it allows us to bring something into the world that wouldn't be here without us. Creativity brings our gifts to fruition. And the third quality of character that I noticed myself, and again through these stories about Freda, is enthusiasm. When we live with enthusiasm as Freda did, we are excited about life and we're open to the wonders that each day holds. We do things wholeheartedly with zeal and eagerness, holding nothing back. We allow the excitement of the moment to fill us, and we enjoy good humor. We live in the moment and appreciate what we have, finding joy in simple pleasures. We're cheerful and optimistic about what is to come. Enthusiasm helps us to imagine what is possible, and we follow our dreams with joy. Confidence, creativity, and enthusiasm. As we leave here today, I can think of nothing better to reflect on than these qualities of Freda's character, and as you do, smile in her memory. Freda will be laid to rest with her mom in the Grand Prairie Cemetery at a later date. I'm going to close by reading another poem, and this was actually suggested by Fran, Freda's youngest. After this, we'll be playing a song, The Beautiful Isle of Somewhere. And listen to the words, sit and reflect as the song plays, knowing that Freda is now on a beautiful isle of somewhere. If Tomorrow Starts Without Me, by David Romano. If tomorrow starts without me and I am not here to see, if the sun should rise and you find your eyes all filled with tears for me, I wish you so much that you wouldn't cry the way you did today while thinking of the many things we didn't get to say. I know how much you love me, as much as I love you, and each time you think of me, I know you'll miss me too. But when tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand. He said, my place was ready in heaven far above, and I'd have to leave behind those I dearly love. But as I turned and walked away, a tear fell from my eye. For all my life, I'd always thought I didn't want to die. I had so much to live for, yet so much left to do. It seemed almost impossible that I was leaving you. I thought of all the yesterdays, the good ones and the bad. I thought of all the love we shared and all the fun we had. If I could relive yesterday even just for a while, I'd say goodbye and kiss you and maybe see you smile. But then I fully realized this could never be, for emptiness and memories would take the place of me. When I thought of worldly things I might miss come tomorrow, I thought of you, and when I did, my heart was filled with sorrow. When I walked through heaven's gates, I felt so much at home. God looked down and smiled at me from his great golden throne. He said, this is eternity and all I've promised you. Today your life on earth has passed, but here life starts anew. I promise no tomorrow, but today will always last. And each since day is the same, there's no longing for the past. You have been faithful and trusting and true. Though there were times you did some things you knew you shouldn't do. You've been forgiven and now at last you're free. So won't you come and take my hand and share my life with me? So, when tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're far apart. For every time you think of me, I'm right here in your heart.
Where the sun is shining, somewhere the songbirds dwell. Hush then my sad repining, God lives and all is well. Somewhere the day is longer, somewhere the task is done, somewhere